Okay, so Auvik, you fairly recently published your 2025 IT report, and I guess that the sort of main highlight was, well, from my perspective, was that you've identified the rise of the IT generalist, and that's maybe not for all the right reasons, but just talk us through this sort of finding, if you like, what's going on.
Yeah, I think the idea of an IT generalist is not necessarily a new one. I think what might be different is the pace of change around, how much of the IT industry is becoming more of a generalist sport rather than a specialist sport. Um, and you sort of, you alluded to some of the findings of the report that this may not be fully intentional, may not be driven by an intentional strategy by businesses to start to, staff their IT teams with generalists in the IT space, but more from the reality that there's a shortage of talent that is available, and that's coming from a number of different factors. And again, not news. We've had a shortage of IT talent for a number of years, and is particularly acute in areas like security. And this is forcing businesses to sort of rethink their hiring and staffing plans and really focus in on having some generalists on staff, and that's sort of what's driving the rise.
Okay, but along with that, as a result of that, these IT generalists, they're required to carry out many different tasks, I guess, taking sort of multitasking to a whole new level,
Right.
and potentially suffering from sort of stress and burnout. And another, to your sort of talk about skills, obviously these folks do have skills, but if they wanted to upskill, they just don't have the time to do it. So yeah, what's going wrong, or why is this, yeah, occurring, I suppose, is the question.
Sure, yeah. So I mean, the idea of the generalist is that they're wearing so many different hats, right? And so as they're working through their day to day, about 60% of IT pros are feeling like they're burned out as a function of just being required to wear so many different hats. The long hours, the repetitive tasks, the switching of tasks, the lack of downtime, right? As soon as you finish one network upgrade, you're now on to doing some sort of endpoint management task, or once you've wrapped up your audit, you're now on to the proactive work that you need to do. So there's never sort of a break from the work. There's always an item that sort of needs to be addressed, and a lot of it ends up being reactive, right? And so those things are really driving a lot of that burnout. Um, about 78% of the respondents that Auvik surveyed here reported that stressors at work are actually preventing them from being able to upskill. So we compound this problem of having this generalist who's sort of stuck managing the entire IT ecosystem and also not able to upskill themselves on new areas that they're having to pick up along the way. And because they're spending time doing all the firefighting and reactive projects, they're never really enabled to get themselves future ready and investing in a lot of the new capabilities that they need to sort of advance your business in the coming years. And so, because of these stresses at work, and about a third of them also said like lack of time. So like lack of time at work, lack of time in we all have personal lives. We all still like to do something outside of the work as well. Upskilling almost becomes like this luxury item, and not something that a lot of organization or a lot of IT professionals really get to do.
And I guess for those IT generalists, it's not good news. The IT department itself, it's not necessarily that healthy, and the business at large, bearing in mind that IT is the foundation, the bedrock for many businesses. It's just not a very healthy situation to rely on these folks who are sort of, yeah, overworked, overstressed, and however good they are, they're potentially not just delivering as well as they could be if there's a better strategy for the business. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, like there's always going to be more that the business wants to do that they want to to meet their business objectives. The technology is there to support those business objectives, and there's always going to be more that they want to do to enable the business. And I think one of the things that we saw as we looked through these trends is actually it wasn't so much like it was basically that this burden of being overworked is actually outweighs the ability to be proactive. And so a lot of these IT generalists are stuck in this reactive state, which then doesn't benefit the business, right? Like if we want to advance specific technology initiatives, we need to invest in infrastructure. We need to forward plan about, like how do we embrace emerging technologies like AI? That requires forethought. It requires some thinking on the strategy. But because we're in this reactive, overworked firefighting mode, we never really get the chance to think about a lot of these proactive things that would really push the business forward. And so it's like this compounding effect that sort of puts us behind the eight ball because we're working on these reactive tasks. So I think this it impacts the business's ability to move initiatives forward, but it also impacts their ability to keep and retain talent, right? This generalist, if they're as they're overloaded, they are sort of no longer as productive as they want to be. That can impact morale. Like if I'm not doing the best in my job, that can also impact morale. And so as staff are overworked, it also leads to retention efforts, which sort of like further exacerbates that IT talent shortage problem. So all things to think about. And I think when we start to think about this, like we have to find some space to start to do some of these proactive functions and to unburden our generalists of some of the reactive tasks that they need to do.
And not least because you obviously mentioned AI there, but I guess if there is the time to understand and then implement AI and automation more generally, there's big potential to actually help redress this situation. But I guess it's finding the bandwidth to sort of onboard these solutions. I understand them. So so
Yeah.
how much potential is there, and I suppose how easy is it to sort of understand them and implement them when you're fighting fires, if you like?
Yeah, I think what we've seen in practice here at Auvik is having sort of an AI evangelist has really been able to help embed a culture of sort of AI and automation across the business to identify, it doesn't have to be a large, scary project that takes months and months to implement, but starting to identify what are the safe ways to start to leverage automation tools, leverage AI tools throughout a lot of those daily routine tasks. And what that can do is it can start to reduce the reactive workloads, right? So you find the small little things you can start to automate, you can start to inject AI to help you become more efficient, maybe not even with the automation, but just with completing data analysis tasks or recommendations or helping you with troubleshooting steps. All of these things can reduce or improve your efficiency on a lot of the reactive tasks you're doing, which can then start to open up some windows for you to start to focus on the proactive items. I think one of the major challenges here is that about 34% of the respondents that Auvik surveyed had no real AI policy in their business. So there's like this lack of guidance and lack of governance over AI tools, which is then limiting not only IT team's adoption of the tools, but also the entire business's adoption of the tools. And so that can cause stress, cause delays in adoption. It can cause a lot of problems around like shadow IT and shadow AI, where users might be adopting some of these tools outside of the purview of IT without maybe doing it in the right way. So I think where we kind of have to start with a lot of these AI and automation tools is creating like a culture within your business, and whether you're an SMB listening in here or you're an MSP listening in, like creating that environment where you have the ability to experiment with tools like AI in a safe way so that you can then introduce what are the right policies, what is the right governance structure, how can we successfully adopt this? Because it's not like it's happening in every business. It's like how do we have it happen in the right way, following the right policies, following the right protocols. And so that becomes a major component of sort of, that AI adoption. All sort of pulling back to, as I start to introduce this, how do I find time to then, unburden myself, make myself more efficient, and help me focus on the things where I should be focusing on more of that proactive side of things.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that as long as the MSPs, the channel, have got to grips with the technology, and whether it's AI and automation or just more generally, there is an opportunity maybe there for them to help these companies that are IT stressed, shall we say, so that to help them offload. Obviously, budgets may be an issue, but assume there's some money there, then they can offer some expertise to bring into an organization. Do you see that as a significant opportunity for the channel?
For sure, yeah. So I would say there's a couple different threads to pull there. Like there's always opportunity for an MSP when our customer base is overloaded and overtaxed within the IT space, right? We now have the opportunity to come in, and maybe it's not our full managed services that we're offering, but it's co-managed services or taking some bit off the plate to help that client become more efficient. And we can introduce some of the MSP can introduce some of the automation that they have built and some of their IP around a lot of those tasks. I think one challenge that MSPs face as well is that, we still have these same structural problems with a lot of the burnout in the teams that we employ. And even things like the tool sprawl that we have. So the number of tools that we all manage contributes to that burnout because we're we're stuck updating a ton of tools and managing a ton of tools. And so we face a lot of the same problems that our clients face. I think we're better prepped in the MSP world to be more proactive and understand the technologies that are emerging and help craft the right approach to a lot of these things. And so we're in a great spot to be able to not only, lead the AI automation charge for our businesses, but then also for our customers as well. So I think like, if I was to get kind of specific, it would be focusing on providing specialized services in some of these areas, right? And if there is, if you're an expert in AI and automation, provide some services around that. If you're an expert in, specific co-managed service offering, you can start to unburden your clients with that, and it starts to open the door to then other service opportunities as well. There's always opportunities for MSPs whenever we're talking about sort of this, whether it's the tool sprawl, whether it's a talent shortage, like all of these things definitely add an opportunity for an MSP to come in and start a conversation and really start to build out that business relationship with their potential clients.
And in terms of other findings from the Auvik report, um, it's perhaps not a new problem, but it's highlights the ongoing, I guess, opportunity for MSPs, but the challenge for end users in particular. You've got this digital distributed workforce. I don't know whether, I mean, it was probably happening before the pandemic, but obviously the pandemic then accelerated the fact that people could work here, there, and everywhere. And clearly there's a lot more complexity that needs to be managed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd kind of semi-assume that people have got used to it and it was no longer a problem. But I think the report suggests that it's an ongoing sort of challenge for everyone to just manage that complexity of so many different types of work from different locations connected, all that stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
how much of an issue is this complexity and diversity, if you like, when it comes to the workforce?
Yeah, I think it's interesting you sort of pulled on the diversity of it and how this like the idea of a hybrid, distributed, remote, whatever word you want to use to describe this workforce that now works from anywhere, right? So here at Auvik, we talk about it as enable users no matter where they're located, no matter where they're working, and just give them the flexibility to be able to work and be productive in those areas. And so, traditionally, when we had everyone inside the office, it was easy to control and manage the infrastructure, put some structure around that. And you're right, like even prior to the pandemic, there's already this push to go remote and go hybrid. And depending on where you are at in the world and where we're at in a specific point in time, you start to see this pendulum swing a little bit one way or the other on, like the return to office mandates or, full flexibility in hybrid. I know, I'm based in Canada. We're close to the States. You're over in the UK. I bet the culture around hybrid and remote work is different in all of our areas. But the reality is like hybrid work is here to stay, right? 85% of IT pros still manage remote workers at least part of the time. And they, so it's no longer an exception to support this hybrid work, right? Like it happens everywhere for everyone, no matter what the return to office sort of pendulum swing is. It's going to keep happening. And with that, about half of support tickets, I think it's something like 63% of support tickets end up being something in the neighborhood of supporting remote users, remote workers. And the tool sets that MSPs have to manage these distributed environments and these hybrid workers haven't necessarily caught up, right? And so that's why we're seeing a little bit more focus, especially on the Auvik side here, on helping to manage networks no matter where that network is, no matter where that user is, right? Because now you need this visibility not only into the traditional infrastructure, you need the visibility into where users sit, no matter like if they're in the coffee shop, at home, you can't assume anything about their environment. And oftentimes those are the tickets that end up taking more time from the help desk that are more burdensome, that are more difficult for that generalist to solve when they don't necessarily have that traditional tool set that they're used to using. So then the question becomes, like, do I introduce new tools to start to manage this distributed workforce? Do I try to look to my existing tools to start to get more visibility into that space? all without, increasing complexity, because as we know, that's going to then lead to, higher workloads, more burnout, all those things we just talked about.
Yeah, so complexity continues to be a problem, and I think the report also highlighted that cost is still a major challenge for IT professionals. I mean, I think most of the sort of reports I've read suggest that IT budgets are increasing, but I suspect if they are, they're not increasing sufficiently to help everyone to do everything that's required. So yeah, what are your sort of thoughts or findings in terms of people trying to do more with less, more with the same? Where are folks at?
Yeah, good question. So there are some good trends in the market around IT budgets generally increasing. The challenge is that there's more tools and more projects that are competing for those same dollars, right? And so while we might have a linear increase in the IT budgets, we don't have a linear increase. It's higher in terms of the projects that are fighting for that budget, and the tools that are fighting for that budget. Just look at something like, the AI conversation we just had. Like, where are those being funded from, and is that being funded from an IT specific budget? Well, now all of a sudden I have less dollars then to start to manage my tool stack. I think you can take a look around at some of the financial uncertainty that always happens, around the world, and that even puts into focus, like, are a lot of the trends we're seeing around IT budgets increasing sustainable, right? Or will there be more pressures and a more reactive sense to bring some of those IT budgets back in under control? Um, at the end of the day, it's how do I try to do more within my existing budget, or how do I decide to do the same with less, right? And so, what are the things that I can start to cut out? And I think one of the things that we're seeing is a consolidation of tools where it makes sense, right? And this is true in the MSP space and across the board, where I'm seeing, what might have been acceptable overlap in tools before, now no longer is. And so it's identifying what are the right champions, what are the right tool champions within my business to start to centralize some capabilities on. I know, like, we see that a lot in network management tools. And as we sort of get into this, manage my network no matter where it is, we have clients that are looking for network management on a non-traditional network. They have gaps in their existing tool set. They have gaps in their network management tool set and their legacy network management tools. They have gaps within their endpoint management tools within their RMM. And so then it's, hey, I need this visibility into this modern network, into this distributed workforce. How do I get that visibility without introducing a new tool and without increasing my overall spend and budget? And so that's when they're looking at, where can I start to consolidate this function within one of my existing vendors? There's actually some interesting data out of the GTIA a couple weeks ago that was specifically on this, and how there's this sort of path towards this vendor consolidation, and how more and more MSPs are focusing their spend in on fewer vendors. It's also a really interesting read if you get a chance.
Okay, and in terms of the sort of IT department's major focus, and maybe it's not that surprising, but the report says that it's end user satisfaction, and this is for the department, the success metric that matters most. I mean, is that the right place, or should it be a bit more complicated? Just making people happy. Maybe you're not doing it for the right reason. So, what's going on in terms of what should people be focusing on? Clearly, you want people to be happy, but you also
Yeah.
want to be the business needs to be moving forward, etc. So.
Yeah, so what we specifically found within the survey is that end user satisfaction came out as the number one success metric, with 48% of respondents saying it was their primary method of being sort of being of tracking success. Uptime and user productivity were right behind that in sort of top tier values. So everything sort of centered around the user uptime, productivity, availability. And I think, like, as I start to think about this data, this doesn't really come as a surprise. IT has always been a business enabler, right? Like, our function is to help support the business goals. Um, and in years prior, that meant, like, getting the systems up and all the systems and support and infrastructure set up so that we could, say, process transactions or ship material goods. And so it was always based on some sort of enabling of a business function. And more work is getting done in this, like, remote distributed way, and connectivity is now, hyper important. Being able to, open up my laptop and have all my tools available to me and start to be productive right away isn't the same as shipping a product was 20 years ago, right? And so we're still enabling the business, and but now enabling the business means enabling my users. And enabling my users having that end user, maybe not satisfaction, but end user productivity, which then comes out in the form of satisfaction, right? Like how quickly am I able to get my job done? When I can't get my job done, how quickly am I able to resolve that issue? Um, I think it's a spot that's there's sort of this linear path from what we used to consider success to be like enabling the business to, hey, we're still enabling the business. It just means slightly different things now, which is all around this like enabling the business means enabling my users, helping them be productive. And measuring employee productivity is not something that IT teams typically do, but measuring end user satisfaction is something that we're more in the spot to be able to manage.
That's great. And then perhaps before we finish, obviously we talked about the report. Then you've been busy because I think you've introduced some additions to the Auvik IT operations platform.
Right.
And I think in simple terms, or they sort of boil down to three sort of main added capabilities. So perhaps you can talk us through a little bit about each. So I think the first one's SaaS automation, SaaS license optimization, if I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So just this past March, we released three major updates to our platform. We focus in traditionally on network management and then SaaS discovery and SaaS management. And so we've built in additional capabilities in both of those products, really to go back to some things we talked about, to focus in on adding more efficiency, helping users become more proactive and whether that's troubleshoot things faster or do some of those day-to-day tasks a little bit quicker. That's really been our focus. So on the SaaS automation and SaaS license optimization, we're now able to go in and automate functions like end user onboarding and end user offboarding. So when we start to talk about, employee turnover and end user turnover, where the metrics can range anywhere from like 20 to 24% of users that are, being turned over every year, that's a lot of activities that MSPs take just to like remove a user and add a user into new applications. So before we were, really, really good at discovering all the applications that users accessed, and we still do that really, really well. And now we've started to automate the functions of offboarding those users and onboarding those users, reassigning licenses for a lot of the key critical applications. And we're prioritizing adding in a ton more applications based on overall usage that we see. So we're seeing how many how many total organizations are leveraging these platforms and able to build some automations around those to help improve the efficiency of IT teams.
Okay, and then I think the second one's around endpoint network monitoring. So again, just tell us what's been added there.
Yeah, I think this is a project that I'm super passionate about, and I think it's an area where we've really created a differentiated product. A lot of MSPs know Auvik as the network management company, right? We pioneered the space for network management within the MSP space, and now what we've basically done is we've taken this network management project and we've now added support for networks everywhere. So no matter where the user is, no matter where the network is, you can now get visibility into the performance of that network and understand how the user is experiencing that network directly related back to those end user satisfaction scores. So on this call, if I was to start to have performance issues or my internet got laggy, you'd be able to get insights into why that is and how to start to resolve that. Or if I'm trying to get work done from Starbucks and I can't, and you can start to see, hey, like you can't expect to get work done at Starbucks. I shouldn't pick on Starbucks specifically, but if I'm on a public Wi-Fi, I can start to see the performance metrics of those public Wi-Fi. While me as the IT professional may not be able to fix that problem, I can at least enable my user to solve it on their own. Hey, go back home, go into the office, or change your work strategy because we now have visibility that we didn't have before.
Okay, and I guess it's possibly on a sort of similar theme, the other one is expanded server monitoring. So yeah, talk us through what you've done there.
Yeah, when we had talked to our customers early on, we found out about 74% of MSPs were currently using a separate tool for server management than they were for network management. And that was an area where we said, hey, like there's probably a lot of server monitoring capabilities that are very well overlapped with the network monitoring capabilities, things that we're really good at. And so we've introduced some server monitoring capabilities to help sort of beef up that expertise that we have in that area and help complement the tool set. Because as we talked about the tool sprawl and the number of tools that MSPs have, if this is one less tool in the tool belt, all the better.
Okay, and maybe just a final question. In terms of obviously you've been quite busy, the report here, then those additions, but if there's anything you can share just with the Auvik roadmap forward, whether it's just sort of general ideas or if there were there any sort of specific launches, etc., we should look out for. Just yeah, whatever you can share as to what's going to keep you busy for the rest of the year, if you like.
Yeah, for sure. I think one really interesting thing, and it's an exciting time to be part of the Auvik engineering, Auvik R&D team. Over the past 12 months, you've seen our development velocity really increase and really, ship out a lot of features, both some of these bigger things we've talked about here today, as well as a lot of, I would say, like incremental add-ons that have really improved our overall customer experience. Things that customers have been asking for a while. We're now iterating on and developing a lot of those. And so some of the cool things that we're working on is more automation. So taking that SaaS automation that we've built out for end user onboard, offboard, and expanding some of that automation capabilities more into that network space. And so being able to do a little bit more of that. And we're also exploring how we can introduce more AI functions within our network management platform. And this is, it's a delicate balance. When we look at end user data, a lot of customers are looking to trust a solution to maybe recommend changes or to help them troubleshoot faster. We're getting to the spot where maybe we're going to be more comfortable with allowing AI to actually make changes for us. I think we're still a little bit away from there, but we'll start to walk along this path with our partners as we introduce more AI driven capabilities.
Okay, yeah, I mean it's almost impossible to have a conversation about IT without mentioning AI a couple of times, but
Had to do
it's
it. Had to do it, right?
yeah, but Steve, it's been really great to chat, and thanks for sharing the insights about the report and obviously what's going on at Auvik as well. So really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.